This is David W. Williams, the founder of the highest paid part-time job in the world options training program. And what we're going to really quickly talk about to try to help you get some understanding of is the mental benefits of being a trader. So to repeat, the mental benefits of being a trader. And so you may be asking, well, who is this guy that's talking to me about the mental benefits of being a trader, and how is it going to benefit me to listen to this particular conversation? So really quickly, is I'm very much like you. I'm a average person, right? That kind of came into the markets. I wouldn't say by accident, but it wasn't 100% deliberate. And I was able to figure out some things that allowed me to become successful. And I think that some of the things that I was able to figure out that allowed me to become successful can also help you become successful in a short amount of time than it took me to figure them out. So who this audio or who this video is going to be for is going to be for a trader who really wants to understand how really becoming diligent and becoming very solid in your training, how that will benefit you, and not only you, but also your family. Because one of the things that I'm a proponent of is that your education not only has to benefit you, but it has to benefit members of your group, right? So that's who this particular video is for. And so what we want to go into is that the mental benefits of being a trader. And when I say trader, specifically, this video is going to be for people that are trading in what I would call the financial market. So stock traders, options traders, futures traders, but also trading also involves, real estate, cars. If you're buying something at one point and you're looking to exchange it at a later date for a profit, essentially you're involved in some level of a trade. And I think we've been conditioned to believe that trade doesn't involve money. It doesn't have to involve money, but it also can involve money. So a trade is not exclusive to not having money involved. And what trading does for you mentally is a lot of things, and we're going to go ahead and go into it. As a trader, right, what you're going to find is that because of what trading demands on you as a person, it demands you to make really, really good decisions. It demands you to be very proactive in a lot of situations, because sometimes you desire to be ahead of a situation. So you can't necessarily follow the crowd. You have to understand where a particular situation is going and position yourself. It really requires you to do a lot of due diligence, where you have to sometimes sit up and study for long periods of time. To be very successful long term, you have to be able to find qualified people that can give you counsel and bring those people in and ask them, how they analyze or what is their interpretation of a particular situation. And what it often does is it changes you from a consumer mindset, right, which is what majority of us have been conditioned to have, into an investor's mindset. Now, you may say, well, what's the difference between the two? Consumers are looking to take their money that was created from their labor 9 times out of 10, and they're looking to buy something, a product or a service, right? They're looking to purchase something with their money. A trader, which essentially is an investor, right? Because investors are looking to try to figure out how to get an acceptable return on their capital. So traders really are investors. Investors are looking for what? To get an acceptable return on their capital. So once you go into the trading space, essentially what you do is you move into an investor mindset, because you're trading because you have a desire to get a return on your capital. And there's a lot of different asset classes that you can invest in to get a return on your capital, but that essentially is what you desire to do. So it's totally different than you being a consumer. The majority of this country, but also the majority of the world, has been very much indoctrinated, right, and been educated that they exist to consume products and services created by other people. That's the only reason that they're here. And then their value or their benefit in their group is what products or services that they own that was created by another group of people. And then because this has been indoctrinated and educated in them so hard, then that's how they start to rank themselves by what products or services do I own and that I consume that have been created by another group of people. Okay? And once you start becoming a trader and you start becoming an investor, because your mind now has to work differently, which is, how can I get an acceptable rate of return on my capital? Right? You now start to see the differences between you and the average person. An acceptable rate of return is going to be specific to that person, and you can find out on your own through doing your own experimentation what is an acceptable rate of return based on the risk that you're going to take with that capital. We're going to go into a little bit of that later. So this is what trading does to your brain. It starts to move you into a different scenario of thinking or a different way of thinking based on an investor's mindset, where you're looking to figure out, how can I get an acceptable rate of return on this situation? How can I get an acceptable rate of return on this situation based on the risk that I'm taking? And then as you become more and you spend more time investing over time, a lot of times when you keep making these same decisions over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, eventually you get better and better and better at making these decisions, because many people are doing investment decisions at 40 years old for the first time. Now, they've been buying stuff ever since they was a child. So they're investing for the first time at 40, or you may be investing for the first time at 20, but you've been buying things your whole life ever since you was a child. So now you have to get enough investment decisions under your belt to where you get very, very comfortable as an investor. And that's what a lot of people may struggle with, is that they may make 3 investment decisions all year, right? Without understanding is that it's not about you doing daily trading or you doing volume trading, but are you starting to see things from the mindset of an investor? Because once you start to see things from the mindset of an investor, right, and you understand that if I'm outlaying my capital, if I'm allocating my capital, right, in an investment, it's designed to get me a return. And many people that don't really understand investing, they confuse these two things. If you're buying something that you're consuming, that's not an investment, right? So if you're buying a book on how to lose weight, that's not an investment. Okay. If you're buying a book on how to fix your car, that's not an investment. You're a consumer. If you're putting 10% into a real estate property because you believe that that real estate property is going to get 15% over a year, and then you're going to get a percentage of that every year, that is an investment. So many times novices or people that are still trying to move out of the consumer standpoint, even they think I'm investing now because I'm buying or consuming something that I want to get a result from, without understanding what an actual asset is that they're investing. And so this is why you got to continue to study and do your due diligence as an investor to really understand, what is a security, what is an asset, what am I actually investing in, and what do I think the return is going to be? Because if the return is hinged on your performance, it may or may not be an investment based on the specific situation. So you're not investing when you're consuming something, right? It's not an investment. That's why I tell people a lot of times, I don't believe that the house that you're living in is an investment. I don't believe it. But other people have different opinions on that. If you're consuming it, it's not an investment. It's a purchase. Okay. And so that's the difference between the two. So I want you to understand is that that's what trading does for you mentally. It starts to shape your brain. It starts to mold your brain into seeing the world from an investment standpoint. And then one day you're going to wake up and you're going to start driving around your city, and you're going to look at things and you're going to say to yourselves, these would be good investments. You're going to look at real estate in certain areas. You're going to say, this would be a good place to invest. You're going to look at companies and you're going to start to determine, this is going to be a good place to invest. This will be a bad place to invest, right? Because you're now seeing the world as, how can I get a return on capital? And the minority of the world thinks this way. And then once you start to understand, right, that this is, even though the minority of the world thinks this way, the people that are controlling the world, this is how they think. You start to understand why policies formed. You start to understand why certain decisions are made in government, because behind the scenes, there were people saying, how can we get a return on capital based on this particular action? We're allocating funds here. How do we get the best return on capital? Unless somebody can come behind or exert influence or power on a situation and say, you know what, we're not concerned with return on capital here. We're going to invest money here because that's what we have decided to do. Most decisions are going to be made by where we allocate capital based on whether we think we can get the best return, right? Then you'll start to understand in certain areas of your city where the property taxes are really not that great in comparison to other areas of the city. While one area of the city gets services, they get things that they need, and that other area where the property taxes are lower don't get it. Why? Because the city understands, right? based on the value of that particular lot, it makes more money. It makes more sense for us to put money in one area than to put money in the other. Why? Because we get a better return on capital. It makes more sense for us to improve this area over here because we're going to return capital at a greater amount. The money that, right? Even though the money that's being sent is taxpayer dollars, the city still looks at it from that standpoint. So you really got to understand that the minority of the world is playing this game of return on capital, but the people that are in control of the world are playing this game. And once you start to understand what is going on, then you start to understand the decisions are being made. And this cannot be boiled down into a platitude of follow the money. It's more complex than that. And by boiling it down to this heuristic platitude of follow the money means that you're not willing to actually do the analysis of the situation and understand why the situation is working out the way it's working out. So I would implore you to avoid these platitudes that take complex things and boil them down into a way in which the person who doesn't want to do the work to understand it can make themselves feel like they actually understand what's going on, right? So I want you to get you to understand is that by understanding and seeing yourself as an investor, right, it puts you in a position where it changes your mind, it elevates you over the average person, and it puts you in a better position to be competitive in this world. Now we're going to move into something that the average person has not been educated on, and the importance of that, which is management of capital and understanding management of capital. Now, why do I think management of capital is very, very important? Because 9 times out of 10, it's going to be your labor, which is your time, that has produced the capital that you're managing. So one of the reasons why you have not been taught how to manage capital is because if they teach you how to manage capital properly, you're no longer going to be as beholden to their system, which is designed to take your labor, right, to make them wealthy, right? And you get the least amount of the return on your own labor. So if you ever learn how to manage capital properly, I'm going to repeat myself. If you ever learn how to manage capital properly, you're no longer going to want to be in a relationship where you're selling your labor to someone and they're getting the most amount of the return off your labor and you're getting the least amount of return off your labor. So you want to ask yourself, you've been following these quote unquote financial gurus, these people with these PhDs, these people with these degrees, these people with the whole alphabet behind their name, these people on YouTube that you've been following. And none of them have taught you how to manage capital. And when I say manage capital, I don't mean financial literacy, another platitude, right? I understand platitudes. I've got a very, very vast a background in marketing. I understand the value of doing these things, but you have to elevate yourself from a space where you're not just ingesting platitudes without any understanding. Financial literacy is a platitude, right? You have to get understanding past those 2 words. So you're not financial literate, right? You don't know how to manage capital, right? Just because a guy's talking to you about financial literacy. You have to understand how to make decisions with capital. Well, what is the goal of the decision that you're making with capital? How to get an acceptable rate of return on capital based on the risk that I'm taking. Now, what is the process that I use to make a decision in managing my particular capital? And then how do I manage it over time? So now instead of seeing yourself as a consumer or seeing yourself as somebody that is just looking to purchase something, you start to understand that your job and your assignment is essentially as a fund manager. And you're managing capital on behalf of your family or your estate or the trust that you're a part of. And now the return on that management of capital is the most important thing to you. And so let me give an example. There's an Arab guy. When I say an Arab guy, it's not to say that as a pejorative. I can't pronounce his name because it's in Arabic. And he's represents a country, I think, called Abu Dhabi, right? So they're one of the oil producing countries in what we call the Gulf areas, or one of the Gulf states. And so that particular country has created a sovereign wealth fund that has a few $100 billion in the fund. It's his job to manage that fund on behalf of really, to be truthful, is his tribe. But they now have formed a nation state. But really what he's doing is he's managing that capital on behalf of his tribe. His job is to manage that properly. So what happened is once this COVID situation hit in March, and he saw a lot of money fleeing the markets, and he saw a lot of money fleeing the traditional investment spaces. One of the things he did, because he understands these two important things, is that wise kings and wise queens have an abundance of counsel. Two is where there is an abundance of counsel, there is safety. And because he really understands those importance of those two parables, right? He reached out to a lot of the people, one of them being Ray Dalio, and he asked them, what is your opinion of investing in this particular space? Like, do you think it's wise or prudent to just pull all of your money out of the markets and just, go liquid, or put all your money into gold, or put all your money into bonds? Like, what do you think? You think I should be totally fleeing investment? And a lot of them recommended that you need to look for companies that can take advantage of this situation of COVID, because a lot of people see this as a new reality. And essentially, you're going to be playing the game of trying to pick more winners than losers, but decide that you're going to allocate a certain amount of money in that fund to a lot of companies that are going to be able to create solutions, right, in this particular area of how do we now live life in this post-COVID area. And so that's what they decided to do. So while everybody was fleeing the markets, they were looking for specific companies, right, that had that ability. And one of the reasons why he said that he decided to move in that direction is because he felt like in 07, 08, when we had the real estate market crash, that they didn't take advantage of situations in that particular area to where they could invest in smaller firms that had solutions, right, that were undervalued, that had a lot of value but had maybe a lower share price, and they could take advantage of those particular situations and then I'll ride that appreciation up to the top. So this man, right, is understanding that it's my job is to manage capital. And then he understands how to make decisions with capital. One of the things that I believe is one of the most powerful things that we teach in the highest paid part-time job in the world options trading course is we have an actual process in which we get people to really examine how they manage capital. If you're going into a situation where you're going to be investing with the intent to get a return, what are the questions that you're asking yourself before you're doing it? What are the questions? As opposed to, I just want to make money. It's deeper than that. What are the questions that you're asking yourself? And that's one of the things that I think is I really think that's the most valuable part of the course, is because, like I said, many of you have been following quote unquote financial gurus, people that's been quote unquote teaching you financial literacy, things like budgeting and things of that nature. And I'm not saying that those things are bad. Those things are actually good. But when you're really trying to understand how to be an investor and how to invest on behalf of your group, you have to start understanding how to manage capital. And it's deeper than just understanding how to budget the money that you're bringing in. What questions do you ask yourself before you allocate capital into a certain area? And if a lot of people understood those questions, right, they would understand the downfalls of putting money into some of these real estate funds that are propped up by people on social media, right? They understand that a lot of these, we're going to build a school funds by people propped up on social media may not be the best place to put your capital. Now, if you're looking to just donate money, that's one thing. But if you're looking to get an acceptable rate of return on the capital, right, you need to understand the parameters and the stipulations, right, and the potential downside risk of putting your money into these people and you only know them on social media, right? That can be an issue. And so because we're not teaching people these things, they enter into these situations lacking understanding, which opens them up for predatory people. So that's the importance of management of capital. Now, what makes you different once you start to understand the mental benefits of being a trader, and once you start to see those benefits of being a trader in your life, is this. Not only are you going to be able to ride around your city, you're going to be able to look at situations and you're going to be able to say, you know what? This would be a good place to make an investment. This would be a good place where I can get a return on capital, right? You start to understand that. You're going to also go out into the world and you're going to see people in situations. And what you're going to realize is that, you know what? They don't really know how to make a decision. You're going to see this with people inside your family where they're going to be presented with scenarios and they don't have a process in which they make a decision, right? And you're going to realize is that because they have not conditioned their mind in the areas in which I've conditioned my mind, they can't make decisions. and they're going to procrastinate. They're going to decide to just be reactionary. They're going to do a lot of avoidance and denial when it comes to decision making. Why? Because they don't have a process to make a decision, right? A lot of people are going to do the avoidance, which is, well, we'll just see what happens. Or, we're going to wait from a sign. We're going to wait for a sign from a supernatural spirit to tell us what to do. Or they're going to do a lot of denial. They're going to deny that a decision needs to be made. Or they're going to procrastinate their way through it, where they're going to avoid it until you don't have a choice but to make something, and now you don't have time to make a proper decision. You're going to go out into the supermarket, and you're going to see people in the supermarket, and they're literally going to be on the aisle, and they're not going to be able to figure out what to buy. Now, that's unusual because it's the same food that was in that supermarket the last time they came in. The same food that was in that supermarket that they came in 3 months ago. The same food is in that supermarket that they came in a year ago. If you go to the same supermarket, you understand that they don't really launch a lot of new food items, right? They launch new food items every now and then, but they don't really launch a lot of new food items like that. So essentially, it's the same food items that was in the store a year ago. Same soup items that was in the store 6 months ago. Same food items that was in the store a week ago. And a person will go into the supermarket, and you can observe them on the supermarket aisle, and they can't make a decision on what to buy. And it's because they haven't really conditioned their mind to make deliberate decisions. Well, that's what traders make. They make deliberate decisions, right? So you'll start to understand how your mind is being developed to be a lot more efficient, to think faster, to think quicker, right? To be a lot more thorough in your thinking patterns than the average person. And this is what is going to elevate you, right, above the average person. And this is what you're going to need to have, right, to be a successful trader, because successful traders don't even think like the average trader, because the average trader is trying to do the same thing we talked about before. They're trying to use platitudes as a way to guide them to where they want to go. And platitudes can't guide them. The word tells you study to show yourself approved. The word don't tell you use platitudes to show yourself approved. You got to be willing to do the study. You got to be willing to get the understanding. You can't think that somebody's going to tell you what to do. It has to make sense inside your own mind. Why? Because you're managing capital. So even though you may have counsel, at the end of the day, you got to take what they say. You got to sit back, work that through your process, and you got to make the decisions. So the benefits, the mental benefits of being a trader, which really means that you're an investor looking to get an acceptable rate of return of capital, is that you now start moving yourself into being almost superhuman thinking. And this is not done from going to school and getting a whole bunch of education, right? Because those people that have all that education still can't solve the problems in their family. So then the question is, what have you been educated for? Right? We're going to have a discussion on that later, right? Going to school and getting all this education and getting all this formalized education doesn't give you superhuman thinking. Understanding how to really solve the problems in your family and in your group, and how you're going to solve them and how you're going to change things, right? Mentally first, and then change things in the real world to get what you want to get out of this world and this physical reality is what's going to give you the superhuman thinking. And that is the mind of the trader, right? Understanding that all things are possible, right? And I've examined these things, and then I've put myself in position for the possibility that I want, as opposed to just going through life and saying, well, you know what, whatever happens, happens, and you not having any desire, right, to do the work to get what you want to get out of life. So I want you to understand, see trading as a mental exercise, and understanding that the benefits of trading is that it's going to elevate you mentally. And be willing to do the work to get off the platitude level where you're ingesting these quotes, right, as a substitute for the work that you're going to have to do internally to become a better trader and a better investor. And if you want to learn more about the highest paid part-time job in the world options trading program and the benefits of that for yourself and your family and your group, reach out to me. This is Diamond Dave, also known as David W. Williams. I'm available on all social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. If you got some value from this, like it, sub it, subscribe to it, share it out, and I'll talk to you later.